Yasodhanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Radhamadava Kunda Vihari Gopidanavallabha Girivaradhari Yasodhanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Radhamadava Kunja Vihari Jayo Radhamadava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramangsa Parirajikacharya Satara Sadasi Sima Tirani Song Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktinanda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 12th chapter, Creation of the Kumaras and Others, text number 43. Vaikhanasa Valakilyao Dumbaraha Fenapa Vane Nyase Kutichakaha Purvam Bhavodo Hangsanishkriyao Vaikhanasa Valakilyao Dumbara Fenapavane Nyase Kuti Chaka Purvam Bhavodo Hangsanishkriyao Vaikhanasa Valakilyao Dumbara Fenapavane Nyase Kuti Chaka Purvam Bhavodo Hangsanishkriyao Vaikhanasa Valakilyao Dumbara Fenapavane Nyase Kuti Chaka Purvam Bhavodo Hangsanishkriyao Chaka Purvam Sanasa Valakilyao Papane hangsa nishkriyo Vaikana savala kilyo Ladies, Vaikana savala kilyo Vaikanasaha. The section of men who retire from active life and live on half-boiled meals. Valakilya. One who quits his former stock of grains on receipt of more. Audumbaraha. One who lives on what he gets from the direction towards which he starts after rising from bed. Feinapaha. One who lives on the fruits which automatically fall from the tree. Vane. In the forest. Nyase. In the order of renunciation. Kutichakaha. Life in the family without attachment. Purvam. In the beginning. Bhavodaha. Giving up all material activities and engaging fully in transcendental service. Hangsa, fully engage in transcendental knowledge. Nishkriyao, stopping all kinds of activities. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The four divisions of retired life are the Vaikanasas, Valakilyas, Audumbaras, and Fenapas. The four divisions of the renounced order of life are the Kutichakas, Bhavodas, Hangshas, and Nishkriyas. All these were manifested from Brahma. Purport. The Varnashram Dharma, or the institution of the four divisions and orders of social and spiritual life, is not a new invention of the modern age, as proposed by the less intelligent. It is an institution established by Brahma from the beginning of the creation. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, text number 13. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam. Vaikanasa valakilya udumbara fena pavane nyase kutichaka purvam bhavado hangsa nishkriyao. The four divisions of retired life are the Vaikanasas, Valakilyas, Audumbaras, and Fenapas. The four divisions of the renounced order of life are the Kutichakas, Bhavodas, Hangsas, and Nishkriyas. All these were manifested from Brahma. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kedamhayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripadamaham vande Sri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanyeshwaram Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So here in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we're hearing how Vidura is inquiring from Maitreya, and he's meant to ask about Krishna's pastimes, yet for the benefit of all living entities, he's asking about the creation, the maintenance, the destruction, the different functions of the Lord's energies. He does so because the majority of living entities are not ready to appreciate the Lord in his personal aspect before they can appreciate the Lord in his grandeur, in his opulence. So here, Maitreya is giving a synopsis. He's giving an overview of the creation of the Kumaras and others. Here we heard in previous verses about the creation of the different spiritual orders of society, and right now we are at the retired and the renounced orders of life. Now in the 11th canto, we also have a description of these, of the Varnashram system, and the names are similar but slightly different, but the meaning is the same. So we will elaborate on these 4 divisions, which are here described as the Vaikanasas, or the section of men who retire from active life and live on half-boiled meals. When you're at home, you get what you want. When you're on the road, you get what you get. And sometimes it's half-boiled meals. Now, if you're a householder, you will say, I don't like this, because I got money, I got resources, I know people, I can do this better. Yet, when you're in the retired mode, then you go, okay, whatever Krishna gives, that's what he gives. And that's what it's going to be. And you're satisfied with that. Because retired persons have retired from active life. Active life means economic development and sense gratification. If you're still pursuing these two, you have not retired from active life. Now, we heard briefly yesterday about student life and householder life, and tapasa brahmacharyena yamena chadamena cha tyagena satasochabhyam yamena niyamena va. The student is engaged in studying Vedic literatures, being humble, submissive, obedient servant of his guru, living simply, austerely, refraining from sex life in all its different aspects, and dedicating his or her life to the pleasure of the spiritual master. Then in household life, it is about creating opulence, creating opportunity for themselves and for others, and sustaining, nourishing the society. And in this way, keeping the whole body nourished, keeping the whole social body functioning. Yet, the Vedic tradition is very clear, Panchashordvam Vanam Vrajet, that around the age of 50, or latest 55, or whenever you have a grown-up son, you should retire from active life, which means from economic development and sense gratification, and to live a more simple life. Live a more simple life means you don't have 3 or 5 of each. You may have 1 or none. Whereas when you live an active life, then the tendency is to accumulate. But we get to that in a little bit. So simple living, simple eating, because one has given up to pursue the interest of having to entertain, having to engage with the world. It's mainly about self-subsistence. And how much do you actually need in order to sustain yourself? Very less. Very less. Dandivai Valakilyas are somebody who quits his former stock of grains on receipt of more. Now next time somebody gives you something, you got to give up that old thing. If you're not ready for that, well, you're not there yet. So don't hoard, don't keep accumulating things that will fill up suitcases and closets and garages and storage spaces and portable pods or whatever they call them. Because we're not meant to try to stay in this world and accumulate more and more attachments. We should focus on the goal of life, which is to go back home, back to Godhead. And for that, we don't need all this baggage. In fact, many of you have seen, how many of you have seen the play with the rocks? You know, the devotees chanting and the guy with the rocks? Just Krishna Kripa Prabhu, okay. All right, I'll brief you for the next drama performance. You have a guy, he's there, and on the other side of the river he sees a kirtan party. And they're really ecstatic, chanting and dancing, you know, like Harnamananda and the whole gang. They're all jumping, frisky. And they say, hey, come over here, we're having fun, it's really happening, it's really great. And he says, yeah, but there's this river. They said, don't worry, just come over. He says, but I got all these rocks. They say, you got to leave them there. You can't take them. Like, it's not going to work. So he decides to play it smart. Or some say he decides to play it safe. So he just keeps a few of those rocks, like his most precious, most dearest attachments, and puts them in his pockets. And he tries to cross the river. And what happens? Bloop, 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 bloop. He drowns. So you can't cross the river with a whole lot of rocks. So whenever you get more, give up what you already previously had. If somebody gives you a new shirt, taken away forcefully, or you can give it up voluntarily. What do you prefer, forcefully or voluntary? Let's hear it for forcefully. Who likes things to be pried from your hands with force? Like we tell people on book distribution, it helps to have an open mind. If not, we also have a crowbar and a can opener, right? Would you like to give a donation? It will be very good for you if you contribute to our little fund here. No, it's a voluntary process, so unless the person actually feels inclined to do so, it will not really have a benefit. Like sometimes people come back. Yesterday I had one young gentleman, and he was very confused. He told me his life story and all the things he's been through. And then he gave me all the things he's been through. And then he gave me a couple of dollars. And then he said, but I don't want the book. And then after a while he came back and he looked really disturbed. And I said, what is it? Do you need your $2 back? And he said, yes. I just can't, it just doesn't work. And I said, okay, here is your $2. And we both felt liberated. So whenever you get something that you should not have, whenever you have a little too much, let go of it. Just let go of it. Don't carry that unnecessary grief. Like one time, Srila Gorkishore Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Which one was it? Who got the 1 rupee? Thank you. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. He got 1 rupee donation, and his servant was carrying him in a basket because he was almost blind and not kind of incapacitated. So after a while, he told his servant to go back to that person, and he returned the 1 rupee. He said, I'm sorry, sir, but your donation is too heavy. I cannot bear that weight. And he returned it. Then we got the Audumbara, somebody who lives on what he gets from the direction towards which he starts after rising from bed. So every time you get up, you start walking in one direction, and what you get is what you get. There's no other options. That's where you go. This is where you're going to get. There's also the saying that you knock on, how many doors is it? Do we have a sannyasi here? How many doors do you knock on every day? 5 or 7 houses? Yeah, you go to houses to beg for charity. From Scripture, yes. It was 5 or 7. So, and whatever you get from those homes, that's what you have for today. You don't go back to your regular sponsors, to your regular donors, the people that will feed you well and treat you well. You know, this place is dosa, this place is dokla, this place is, pizza. No, you just depend on the mercy of the Lord. Just like when Lord Chaitanya went on a tour, he asked all the devotees who came with him, did you bring anything? You remember that from the CC, Chaitanya Bhagavat? He asked them, did you bring anything? And the devotee said no. And he said, very good. We will just depend on Krishna. And whatever Krishna gives us, that will be fine. Sometimes when Lord Chaitanya used to travel in the Jharkhand forest, his servant kept a little bit of stock of grain, so he had something to serve the Lord. It wasn't for himself, it was for the service of the Lord. One time a devotee brought mira balm, amalaki, with him. And he said, not good, not good. We should just depend on whatever Krishna gives us. Of course, for householders, there's a different rule. So different ashramas, different varnas have different rules. Then, Phenapa, one who lives on the fruits which automatically fall from the tree. Have you ever tried that one? Live on the fruits that automatically fall from the tree. Good luck finding a fruit tree, right? In New York City, have you encountered many fruit trees? Rarely. In California, there's quite many, and majority of the people don't bother to pick up the fruits because they rather go to Whole Foods or to wherever they go shopping. So you can actually go around neighborhoods and just ask people and pick up first-class fruit. I remember as a child, we used to go to farms, and when they went harvesting with the big machines, there was a lot left over on the field. There was a lot lying around, and you could just pick it up and take it. So these are the 4 stages of retired life. Retired means, again, no more effort for, what is it? Number 1? Economic development. Number 2? Sense gratification. But you accept whatever the Lord gives you. Then you have the 4 stages of renounced life, also known as the sannyas ashramas. Kutichak, Bhavodas, Hangsas, and Niskriyas. Slightly different from Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajikacharya, and Paramahamsa. But in principle, in essence, the same. Kutichak is one who lives in the family but without attachment. It says that they build a little kuti. You heard of the kutir? The kuti. It's a little hut. You don't stay in the house, you stay in the kuti. Like in the shed or in the garage. Or you put a little cubicle out there. And you stay there and you do your bhajan. You just do chanting. But the food is supplied from the home. Why? Because the sannyasi is not yet trained. He doesn't know yet how to move in the world, how to live as a renunciate. So he's still getting meals from home, but he's not in the house with the family. He's in his own place, dedicating all his energy for spiritual practice. Then the next stage is bhavoda, giving up all material activities and engaging fully in transcendental service. So moving out from the house, usually to the outskirts of the village, still in touch, but remote. Then the next stage, Hangsa, fully engaged in transcendental knowledge, which is Parivrajikacharya, preaching the message of Krishna consciousness far and wide, benefiting all living entities by sharing the message of bhakti and giving people enlightenment. And then Paramahamsa or Nishkriyau, stopping all kinds of activities, not engaging with the world, full absorption in the Supreme and in spiritual practice. Now in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that these four orders of divisions of social and spiritual life are not a new invention. Sometimes people want to say, yeah, this is the caste system. This is being created to subjugate and to keep people downtrodden. Have you heard this argument before? Are you with me, people? Or are you in samadhi? Are you fully absorbed in your devotional tasks? So whenever you hear this, then you just quote the verse that Prabhupada quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, text 13. Chatur varnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasha. Which means that these categories are not according to birth, but they're according to guna and karma, to qualities and work. Those are the two determining factors that define in which position, in which category you are in. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma created these systems under the order of Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter, verse number 6, Krishna is saying something very interesting. Karmendriyani samyamyaya aste manasa smaran indriyartan vimudhatma mityacharasa uchate. One who restrains the senses of action but whose mind dwells on sense objects certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. Pretty heavy stuff, huh? Do you ever choke when you read that verse? Or it goes smooth, it just goes down like milk with honey. Huh? It's like, whoa, who's he talking about here? Huh? So Prabhupada speaks about pretenders, and he says that for sense gratification you can act in any capacity, in any situation, in any status of life. You don't have to call yourself anything if you're after sense gratification. But there are meaning to these orders, and one should know them and one should follow them. So pick any of the four orders and live according to the rules. There is no 5th ashrama. There is no 5th varna. Of course, in California there is. It's called whatever. Have you heard of whatever? Whatever, dude. So, but that's not accepted in our Vedic tradition. And it's a progressive path. Progress means you actually move forwards towards the goal. Not that you start at the top and then you regress to destruction. So it's a progressive path. And in former society, people were trained by their elders, by their culture, by their upbringing, by studying Shastra, to learn these different qualities, these different activities, which nowadays are quite elusive, even though we still have certain fragments of that. Student life, it's still there to some extent. Married life, retired life, and even renounced life to some extent. Yet, people have misconstrued, they have instrumentalized these stages for other purposes. Just like Prabhupada is speaking in that Bhagavad Gita 3.6 about people who are utilizing the renounced stage of life to exploit people, to mislead them by word jugglery, by giving them some impersonal philosophy, and basically using their position of authority to misguide, to mislead people. So these systems are very scientific. It requires detached, mature elders who can train and who can guide people and who know what is most beneficial, what is best for them. One time I was in Udupi and I was distributing books around Krishna Mat. And I met one Pandit who was wearing dhoti and uttariya, just his chadar and his dhoti. And he had a big sikha and big tilak and about a dozen students with him. And he was carrying big stacks of big books. So I went up to him and I wanted to give him one of books of Prabhupada. And as I handed him a small book, he looked at me and he asked me, "What is your qualification?" I was a little shocked, because if somebody asks you, "What is your qualification?" well, what are you going to tell him? So I thought, whatever I'm going to tell him, he's not going to like it. So, what do you say when you don't know what to say? Like when you fly into the great country and they ask you, "What is the purpose of your visit to the United States?" Okay, down the chute. You got to have your spread the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? Yes. And if you tell them that, and you actually believe that, and you're actually doing that, they will smile at you and they will say, "God bless, son. Have a good day. Have a nice day." So, you say a little prayer and Krishna will give you the right words. So I said, "Gopi Bharta Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasa Anudasa." And he smiled. He had a big smile because he's a Pandit, he knows Sanskrit. So he says, okay, this kid knows something. I was quoting that verse from Lord Chaitanya where he says that I'm not a brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi. I'm not a shudra or brahmin or kshatriya or vaishya. I'm simply trying to be the servant of the servant of the servant of the gopis who are serving Krishna. So he had a big smile and he said, "Good boy." And he took out 10 rupees from his dhoti, you know. They'd got the water cash, you know, wrapped in their dhoti. So he took it out and he gave me 10 rupees and they all walked off. So often devotees get confused because we hear these statements, you got to follow Varnashram, 50% of our mission is not yet accomplished, and then we hear that devotees are transcendental, they're beyond Varnashram, we don't have to follow Varnashram, we don't need all that stuff, you can act in whichever capacity. This is a structure. A structure is good to give you form, to give you some stability, to make you regulated. But structure for what? What is the structure holding up? The substance. And the substance is Krishna consciousness. The substance is devotional service. Now, if you don't have any structure, then most likely there'll be very little of that devotional service. That's why we're very fortunate. Srila Prabhupada has given us a movement. He's given us temples. He's given us a society. He's given us a social structure where we can gradually progress towards the goal of pure devotional service. But first there's Vaidhi Bhakti, regulated devotional service. You get up early. That doesn't mean when breakfast is served. It means before the sun rises. And you take bath. And you go to Mangal Arti. You chant Hare Krishna on your beads, 16 rounds. Now I know for some of you this sounds like, hey, yeah, no problem. I've been doing this. But for a lot of people, you ever go out and you meet people and you ask them, what is your, they tell you, I'm a Buddhist, or I'm a this, or I'm a that, and then we ask them, what is your practice? And then they look at you. There is a practice? And then I ask them, what is your practice, or are you just dabbling in many things? And then they will agree, yes, I am just dabbling in many things. But I'm not really dedicating myself to any particular path. So it takes elders to train and to guide, and also to recognize what is the nature of this young person. What does this person need right now? Otherwise, it's very easy to fall into fanaticism, that one may say everybody has to be like this or everybody has to be like that. Otherwise, there is no salvation. That doesn't work. So through the process of Krishna consciousness, we will become purified gradually. It is a gradual process. One time they asked Srila Prabhupada, how long did it take you to perfect your japa? And Prabhupada could have said, hey, me and Krishna, we're tight, we were throwing lunch bags around and, I'm one of the in crowd. He could have said, I was born in this. I've been doing this my whole life. No, he said, it took me 40 years to perfect my japa. 40 years. So keep chanting, keep doing kirtan, keep serving. And it will become revealed gradually. It's a gradual process. That doesn't mean that gradual means that the taste is less. No. It just means you're actually progressing. You're actually making advancement. You're actually moving forward towards the goal. So, observing others and giving them accurate feedback is very important in spiritual life. We can see how this is happening, like the associates of Lord Chaitanya, when Lord Chaitanya came back from his travels through the Jharikand forest, and his servant Kala Krishnadas, he became bewildered. He got bamboozled by some unsavory elements who corrupted him. So Lord Chaitanya said, I don't have any use for this man. But the devotees were so merciful, they asked him, can we send somebody to Navadvip to tell your mother and the other devotees that you have returned from your South India tour? And he said, yes, you do as you please. They didn't say, can we send Kala Krishnadas? But that's what they actually did. They gave him service. Nowadays, if somebody makes a mistake, we're like, okay, you're in the doghouse, You know what the doghouse is? Huh? Be gone and stay gone for however long. No, the devotees gave him service. Because service is what makes us purified, is what makes us more advanced, not to be banned. Of course, sometimes people are a nuisance and a danger to themselves and to others, and they need to be serving somewhere else where they're not interfering with other people's service. Just like sometimes people ask me, what is your service? I say, my service is mostly not to interfere. Because when the potency is moving, don't interfere. Let Krishna do the magic, and you just be there to witness and to assist, but don't interfere. That would be great service. I flew into LaGuardia yesterday. When I walked past baggage claim, I heard that my friend was still out there somewhere in the great traffic jam of New York. So I just walked around and I just observed people, because that's my job. That's what I do. I saw one guy, tall guy. I walked up to him and I told him, you're from Montenegro. He said, how do you know? I said, you play basketball. He said, how do you know? I said, here's the book. It explains all about it. And he was very happy. He's in the national team. He's one of the national team of the basketball players. Yesterday we walked to Washington Square Park. There's 3 of us, and we crossed a little park which was there just when you get off the subway station after the basketball courts. There's that shortcut. You know that shortcut? You all know that shortcut. You're all taking that shortcut. So in that little park, there was 2 guys sitting there with their bicycles delivering food. And I looked at them and I said, Uzbek! And they said, which means you're from Uzbekistan. And I said, Tashkent is their capital. And I said, Plav, which is fried rice. And they said, hey, what you got for me? What you got for me? If you can recognize people's nature, they will actually trust you. You know Washington Square Park, have you ever talked to the vendors there? Like, 80% is selling weed. But then there's 20% which actually got some arts or some clothes or some other kind of stuff. So there was 2 ladies, one from Israel and an American lady. They were selling vintage clothes or whatever they found somewhere. It looked pretty raggedy. So the Israeli lady, if you want to stop people in Israel, you just ask them, are you smart? And it kind of just jolts them, it just kind of, because everybody is very switched on. So, or you ask them, are you smart or are you average? So I just told her what her constitution was, and she was very happy to receive a book. There was 3 young guys who were still in high school, and they were selling lemonade right next to the Harinam. You saw those guys? Yeah? So I just gave them a book each, and they happily handed over their collective tips, as a contribution. But the point is that we have to be interested in the benefit of those people. We have to actually care about them. It's not that we tell them, oh, you're a this or you're a that, and therefore you are disqualified, or therefore I can exploit you, or therefore I'm better than you. No. People want to be appreciated, respected, and included. And then, when you have the tendency or the mood, the spirit of appreciating diversity, then people will be interested to know about what is the unity. If you can't appreciate diversity, you can't appreciate unity. Because they're interconnected. And then they want to know, okay, what do we have in common? What is it that we have in common? Okay, you appreciated me, how can I appreciate you? Srila Prabhupada was very expert in this. Therefore, he created this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which is still and will be the premier institution for practicing Krishna consciousness. There are so many who are trying things and who are dabbling in things. But when you actually look, where is there a systematic education where you can learn about what does it mean to be a brahmachari, a grihastha, a vanaprastha, or a sannyasi, then you will again end up here. So we're very fortunate that we have this opportunity, and Srila Prabhupada has given us the process by which we can stay focused and to appreciate our diversity, at the same time not losing the unity, which is the essence, and that is Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridavrata namashyantascha mam bhakti nitya yukta upasate. Hearing and chanting about Krishna. When Ramananda Roy spoke about Varnashram, karma, jnana, tyaga, he said, nah, you got to do better than that. Give me something better. But then he told him, hearing and chanting about the Lord. And Lord Chaitanya said, this is great. Keep going. This is what I want to hear. This is what interests me. Keep going in that direction. That's the right path. So Srila Prabhupada made sure that there was hearing and chanting going on, but he also said if there is no preaching, there will be no more Hari Hari Bol. Because it will become just about my own comfort, my own situation. So Srila Prabhupada showed us by his own example, walking the streets of New York and taking any type of discomfort. Living in a strange land with very strange people, just serving them, cooking for them, serving them, cleaning, till somebody asked, Swamiji, can I help you? And he said, yes. I thought nobody would ever ask. So maybe they're spoiled, they're rich kids, They had maids and, their parents spoiled them. So he was ready to serve everybody till Krishna, whatever would Krishna manifest. He was not really perturbed that the result was not happening according to the timeline. that he was expecting it to manifest. So these are some reflections. We got time for questions and comments. Maharaj, Ramroy Prabhu, our esteemed audience. Yes.
I just had one thought popped into my mind when you were speaking earlier about the person going to get fruits that drop from the tree. If you go to Florida, there are lots and lots of orange trees everywhere, and they're all full of oranges, but all the oranges taste like lemons. So, I don't know what the story is there. But
well, if you got lemons, make lemonade.
Right,
you know?
right. They work like lemons, but
Yeah.
nobody eats them because
Okay.
they look like oranges, but they taste like lemons.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that looks good, but that tastes awful. Thank you. Any other insights? Gopal Champu? And then Krishna Kripa.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So you were talking about Krishna's time, and there's also our expectations. So how can we bring those things a little closer together instead of my expectations over here and Krishna's time is over here? How do I align myself more with Krishna's time?
Thank you. You take instructions from Guru and from mentors, people who are more mature, who have walked the path, who can tell you what's the next step. Because sometimes we may not see what's the next step. We may just see breakfast and lunch is still pretty hazy. It's not yet very clear. Because our vision is limited by our current situation. So take guidance, take blessings, and again, it's a progressive path. Sometimes we think, yeah, I can jump from here to there and bypass everything. And then at some point we realize, I'm not there. I need to go the gradual to progressive path. So that takes honesty. Otherwise, if I become a pretender, I can pretend to be anything. But there's so many people in the park who run around and they think they're something or somebody, and they're just a nuisance to themselves and to the public. So we should not take that route. Otherwise, it's kind of unproductive and frustrating. Krishna Kripa Prabhu?
Thank you for your class. You always make points that are relevant to our lives. I appreciate that. Just had a small point. I was wondering, really, how many houses does the Madhukari actually go to?
So you looked it up, yes, so tell us.
Folio. I didn't search Google this time. And apparently, Mahanidhi Swami has a book called Gaudiya Vaishnava Samadhis in Vrindavan, in which it is said, Madhukari is a Babaji's daily practice of begging a little food from 1 to 7 houses.
1 to 7.
Yeah.
Okay, so take your pick.
Yeah.
Thank you. Prabhupada Priya.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. We hear about these stages of sannyas, but to my knowledge, I don't think in ISKCON we practice the specific stages. It's kind of like grihastha, and then the man goes back to kind of living like a brahmachari, and then takes sannyas. So, how important is it to go through these stages, and is it something that you foresee that will become more established within ISKCON in the future?
From what we can see, even though we don't have these 4 categories of sannyas, but still they're there. Because initially you're a new guy, right? So you ask your sannyas guru and your mentors, okay, how do we do this? and you learn the ropes. And after a while you venture out and you do the rounds and you go wider circles and you have some more experience. So it is happening, but it's not formalized as such. And I doubt it ever will be, because Prabhupada hasn't institutionalized it as such. Because some of these things we have to understand the principle behind it, but the detail, we may not apply it in the same way as it is given. Like it says, for instance, brahmachari or vanaprastha does not clean his teeth or cut the fingernails or the hair. So, principle is live simply, live austere. The detail is what is appreciated and accepted according to social norm. In a lot of places, you walk around barefoot or you don't wear a shirt. You ever seen those signs? No shirt, no shoes, no service? People don't want to talk to you. They just will dismiss you if you're not fitting into their category of civility. So we have to understand principle and detail, and then we get a better idea. Because sometimes we are into instituting all the protocol, all the details, and then we get frustrated because it just doesn't work. And legislation anyway at this stage of the game is a very frustrating and tedious affair. And we cannot legislate culture. Culture is something that you have to live, that you have to imbibe by following role models and by being inspired. A culture is not something that you can institutionalize. Even though we sometimes wish we could do that, but in practicality it does not really happen that way. So it's important to understand the principle and apply the principle. In detail, it may look slightly different in different cases. Like these ceremonies that people have for all these stages. When Krishna turned around in his bed, they held a festival. There was a big utsav. Krishna turned over in his bed. And they had a big ceremony, a big festival for 1 or 2 days. They celebrated for that. These are all different stages of development, different stages of the passage. We don't have that.
Also, I was wondering, like for brahmachari, grihasta, and sannyas ashrams, there's like a visible transition, like change of dress, or there's a yagya that, transitions one into that ashram. It seems like, at least as the way we practice it in ISKCON, for vanaprastha ashram, there's nothing. It's just kind of like, yeah, I'm a vanaprastha. Yeah,
still work in progress. Like you see outside the construction, work in progress, inconvenience, cost regretted. So, just you may have to take a little detour. It's not yet fully manifested. But if you read the Bhagavatam and you study our tradition, you will understand what is the proper course of action. So then you know what is the goal and how to actually progress towards the goal. Other questions? Yes, last one. Bhakta Aiden. Right up front.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for such an inspiring class, as always. You mentioned unity in diversity, which clearly Srila Prabhupada really emphasized. But I was wondering if maybe you could elaborate a little more on what that actually means. Because as devotees, I think sometimes we also have to have discernment as to what is best for our spiritual life, while also working to appreciate what others are doing, even if they might not be doing exactly what I like or what I agree with in my spiritual life. So could you elaborate a little more on how we can really embody unity in diversity?
Srila Prabhupada asks his leaders to come to Mayapur every year and for 2 weeks to discuss unity in diversity. It's not what we're going to do in the next 2 minutes, but just in a nutshell, unity, what is our main business, what is our main focus, and what are the different components, the different aspects, the different facets of it, how it can actually happen. If you stress too much unity, everything will suffocate. If you stress too much diversity, everything will get diluted and spaced out. So you need a proper balance. Of course, the holy name, the Sankirtan movement is not dependent on Varna and Ashram. It's not dependent on social structure. But still you can see, like in Christianity, to give you an example, till 357, Emperor Constantine made it a state religion, they had nothing. They had a bunch of fanatics, a bunch of ecstatics. They were just ending up as lion food. So when it became institutionalized, when it became formalized, when it became structured, they actually took off as a movement. Before it was just a few inspired or sometimes very fanatical preachers. So the same thing can happen to us. So we're 50 years in the game. We're not doing too bad. Of course, a lot more could be done, but it takes time. It takes time to grow. So understanding the difference between a principle and a detail, seeing how they're related, what is the actual usefulness of it. We are here to receive and share Krishna Bhakti. In order to do so peacefully, we need a social structure that allows us to function. For sense gratification, we can function in any capacity. But for spiritual life, everybody should figure out what is their best position in which they can serve Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.
Hare. His Grace Navina Nirada Prabhu ki jai.